I wanted to take just a couple minutes to talk about barking. I think that this, as a problem behavior and as a subject, is something that a lot of people misunderstand. So, there are so many different reasons why your dog might be barking. Off the top of my head, there's dogs who will demand bark. There's dogs who will bark from boredom. There's dogs who bark because they don't like being confined or that have separation anxiety, or dogs who bark, out of excitement. Dogs who are old and so they have like a little bit of doggy dementia going on, and so they bark because of that. There are so many reasons why your dog might bark, and we address them all differently. So, another thing that is also really important, and why it's important to know what type of barking your dog's doing, is because barking is a symptom. If your dog doesn't like being confined and so they're barking, that's the symptom of their confinement and of having a larger problem underlying it. If your dog is barking because they're afraid of something or something like that, that's the underlying problem there. And so all these different reasons for why your dog is barking, we address them differently. And it is really important to know why your dog is barking, because that's going to tell us how to proceed. For example, if you have a dog who's fearful, you're not going to address that the same way as if you have a dog who just gets overexcited or a dog who's very pent up. So that's some of the things that you should be keeping in mind, or at least trying to think about. Like, when does your dog bark? Have you noticed any sort of pattern? Do they bark at multiple different times? Because that means that perhaps there's multiple different problems going on. There's dogs who will bark themselves awake. I mean, literally the list goes on of why your dog might be barking. And I really think that sometimes it's easy for people to sort of mash all these problems together, and it's like, oh, well, my dog is making noise, so obviously I don't want them to make the noise because it's noisy, or I live in an apartment, or it's really obnoxious, or it's been going on for months, or whatever the reason. All totally valid reasons, but we have to know why that's going on first before we can address anything. And I will also say that as far as barking goes, there's very few instances where it's going to be, oh, let's put a bark collar on the dog. Because, like I said, these are all symptoms of an underlying problem. And that should be addressed, or else we're going to see something else come out of the dog if that problem isn't addressed. And then in many of these cases, like if your dog is fearful and they're barking out of fear, or they're just, making noise because of that, and you put a bark collar on them, that's going to make the problem worse, and it's potentially going to amplify a lot of other things that your dog is doing as well. So, yeah, that's all I've got about barking. It is a really wide topic as far as why, and knowing why is super important. So if you find any patterns with your dog's barking, that's something to take note of, and that's something to keep in mind, because as I said, that's going to be the key to fixing it and getting your dog and yourself to a better place.